Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Dr. Matt from Pinnacle Chiropractic, your local pediatric, prenatal, and family chiropractic practice in the Sarasota, Bradenton, and Lakewood Ranch, Florida area. And today is episode number 20 of our Pinnacle's Perspective, our weekly health cast. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about 7 rocket fuels to your child's sensory system. So a lot of the times we talk about our care and how we calm down that sensory system, that nervous system, that master control system of the body. There's other avenues you can do to calm that nervous system down, things like pediatric yoga, pediatric meditation, and then obviously pediatric chiropractic care. But today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the things that might be ramping up your child's sensory system. And when we really talk about the sensory system and ramping it up, it's really things that are really going to stimulate that sympathetic gas pedal, fight or flight, or stress mode of their nervous system, of their sensory system. So we'll go over 7 things that you really want to limit in your child's life as much as possible. We understand some of these things, in our culture and in our world are very, very common, but they are 7 things that are going to ramp up and are what we describe as rocket fuels to your child's sensory system. So the first one is going to be screen time. So we all know and understand, especially myself as a parent, it's easy to give your child a tablet or put on a show for them because that's the easiest way to get stuff done, especially with younger kids. It's a lot easier to give them that screen, give them that tablet to be able to accomplish tasks at home, cleaning the house, doing dishes, doing stuff like that. But oftentimes that screen time is a rocket fuel to that sensory system. We've all been there where we've given our child that tablet, put on a show for them, and then we go to turn it off, and we see this big explosion of emotion, screaming, crying, tantrum, meltdowns, because they want to keep watching their show or keep watching their tablet. And so oftentimes that screen time really ramps up that brain and that sensory system into more of that fight or flight. And then we have those behavioral outbursts as a result of that once we try to take that screen time away. So really limiting that screen time as much as possible is really going to avoid being that rocket fuel to your child's sensory system, being that trigger that kind of sets them off, that triggers them and pushes them into more of that stress mode, that gas pedal mode, and that fight or flight mode. So limiting screen time is really going to benefit them and decrease that rocket fuel to that sensory system. So the first one is screen time. The second one is really a fast-paced lifestyle. So especially in our culture, actually during COVID times, we've kind of taken a little bit of a step back from our fast-paced lifestyle. We're not as crazy busy, but oftentimes with young kids, we're running from school to maybe sports practice, to dance, to gymnastics, to taekwondo, to swimming. We have all these extracurriculars after school that our children are in to keep them busy, essentially. But oftentimes, that fast-paced lifestyle, constantly being on the go, 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 and specifically for children that have sensory struggles, that have ADHD, anxiety, those type of things, these type of things are going to affect their sensory system even more. So I should preface that before. We're really talking about kids that have already sensory struggles, ADHD, anxiety, things like that. Their nervous system and sensory system is already in that fight or flight more often than it should be. So ramping it up and feeding that rocket fuel is just going to send them deeper into that stress mode, deeper into that fight or flight mode. So that fast-paced lifestyle is that second rocket fuel. So constantly being on the go, 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 that child is just constantly having to transition one time after another, and that's stressful for their sensory system and really is that rocket fuel. It just sends them more into that fight or flight. So we've all been there where your child's just exhausted. It could be exhausted after school, and then we have things we have to do after school or places we have to go, and they just have a big emotional outburst, a big meltdown. It's because their sensory system is telling them we can't keep going, we can't keep keeping up this fast-paced lifestyle. We need a break, and those big explosions of emotions and behaviors are often a result of that. So that second rocket fuel is that fast-paced lifestyle. The third one is going to be inadequate sleep. Sleep is really our time during the day where that body goes into deep rest and relaxation mode, deep parasympathetic nervous system mode. And so, if your child's not getting very good restful sleep, if they're not able to fall asleep very well or stay asleep, and they're tossing and turning, getting up multiple times throughout the night, that inadequate sleep is a rocket fuel to their sensory system and to their nervous system as well. So we've all been there with children that are extremely tired. They're a lot of times an emotional wreck, or sometimes we'll even see the kids that are exhausted. They're just super hyperactive. They're go, 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 go. Once again, it's stimulating that gas pedal of their nervous system, of that sensory system, and that stress mode. So it can end up in extreme energy, or it can end up in extreme behaviors and emotions as well. So that third ingredient really is that inadequate sleep. Making sure your child is getting good restful sleep each and every night is definitely going to help their nervous system be calm and refreshed going into each day. The fourth one is food sensitivity. So many of the kids that we take care of that have sensory struggles, ADHD, anxiety, they also have gut issues as well. So a lot of the kids that we take care of have leaky gut challenges. And so they're sensitive to all these different foods. Well, if they keep on eating those foods that they're sensitive to, it's a rocket fuel to that sensory system. So a lot of parents will tell me, well, they don't really show any digestive system symptoms. But what we know about that gut brain connection is it's not always obvious digestive system symptoms that are going to be kind of the telling point or the telling factor of those food sensitivities. So if your child's sensitive to something that they're eating all the time, it's going to ramp up that sensory system that could lead and fuel behaviors. It could lead and fuel emotions. It could lead and fuel hyperactivity, lack of focus. Those things also present themselves when we see food sensitivities as well. So that fourth really rocket fuel to that nervous system is going to be those food sensitivities. The fifth one is going to be dyes and chemicals. So we're talking about especially food related things as well. So red dye, blue dye, any of the food colorings or the food dyes are really going to ramp up that child's sensory system. So a lot of parents already know that have children with sensory struggles, anxiety, ADHD, that they can see that behavioral difference as soon as their child eats something with red dye or a lot of dyes in it. So a lot of the times going off to kids' birthday parties, you'll see a lot of food there, especially the cake and the frosting on the cake that has a lot of those food dyes. And then the children start to unravel shortly after because they're taking in all of those food dyes. So those food dyes and then the food chemicals. So these are going to be chemicals within highly processed foods. So eating a lot of fast food, eating a lot of frozen packaged food is also going to be laced that has a lot of those food chemicals in it. So those food chemicals and the food dyes are going to be another rocket fuel to your child's sensory system and to their nervous system, something that creates and sticks them more into that gas pedal, that sympathetic, that fight or flight or stress mode of their nervous system and sensory system. So one of the big recommendations that we give in our office is really buying organic stuff whenever possible, because those organic, especially packaged stuff, are going to take out a lot of those food dyes and a lot of those chemicals as well. So high fructose corn syrup is a big chemical that we see in a lot of kids' foods to use as a sweetener, and that's also that big rocket fuel to their nervous system and that sensory system. So buying organic packaged products like organic cereal, organic ketchup, all of those things are really going to cut out some of those food chemicals and those food dyes and lessen that kind of effect on your child's nervous system and on your child's sensory system. So that fifth rocket fuel is those dyes and chemicals specifically within foods. And then number six, this one's going to be a little bit maybe something different than you might have heard or might have known, but it's really that confrontation. Confrontation, especially when we're talking about sensory ADHD anxiety kids, is often a rocket fuel for their sensory system, for their nervous system. It often pushes them farther into that fight or flight, into that gas pedal, into that stress mode of their nervous system and their sensory system. So especially like parenting tactics, sometimes, being more confrontational and more disciplinarian with these kids can often backfire. So especially parents probably understand this a little bit more that have children with those struggles, that when they try to be more stern and more confrontational and more disciplinarian, it often backfires and increases their child's emotions. You actually see an increase in emotions, increase in behaviors, because it's stressing out that sensory system even more. It's stressing out that nervous system even more. So that sixth really rocket fuel to the sensory and nervous system is that confrontation. And then the last, and the seventh and final rocket fuel to the nervous system and the sensory system is going to be sugar. So we've all been there as parents where, once again, usually a lot of the times, birthday parties are kind of the culprit for this, because kids are eating a ton of sugar and a ton of those food dyes and chemicals at birthday parties. But oftentimes, as parents, we've seen where we've given our children a lot of sugar, especially Halloween time as well. Teachers especially know this, that they can see a big difference in the way their classroom behaves after Halloween or around Halloween time, because children are eating a lot more candy, a lot more sugar. That sugar is, once again, a rocket fuel to the nervous system, to the sensory system. So it ramps that nervous system up, sticks it more into that gas pedal, more into that fight or flight, more into that stress mode of the nervous system, of the sensory system. So limiting sugar intake can lessen that ability of that nervous system to get overwhelmed and to get further into that stress mode. So those are 7 of the most common rocket fuels that we see in a lot of the kids that we take care of. So what we recommend is really limiting those 7 rocket fuels as much as you can, especially if you have a child with sensory struggles, with ADHD, with anxiety, those things where their nervous system and sensory system is already more in that fight or flight, more in that gas pedal mode of the nervous system. So limiting those 7 things can really help your child function a lot better on a day-to-day basis. And so maybe you're listening to this webinar, or you're listening to this episode of our Pinnacle's Perspective, and you're thinking, man, my child has multiple of those on a daily basis. Maybe I need to start limiting some of those things. So limiting those things is definitely going to help. But really, the biggest step as well to limiting those, if you want to fully calm that brain, that nervous system of your child, it's really getting an evaluation in our office to find out if we can help them, to find out if that nervous system, if that sensory system is in more of that gas pedal, in more of that fight or flight, in more of that stress mode of the nervous system. So during the COVID times right now, we are offering you to come in at a discounted rate. So normally in our office, the kind of first 3 visits, that includes a phone consultation, our evaluation and nervous system scans, and our report of findings visit. Normally that's $250. During the COVID time right now, we're offering that for half off, for $125. So message our office on Facebook, or you can call our office 941-822-8828 if you'd like to set up an appointment to see if we can help your child calm their nervous system, calm their sensory system, so they're able to function much better. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this 20th episode of Pinnacle's Perspective, and you're gaining a lot of value and knowledge from each week that we present something else. Like I said, we're going to continue to come to you guys on a weekly basis with different content, with different of our community connections, with different testimonials, different education pieces like the one we did today. so that we can provide as much value for you guys and you can learn as much about us and our community connections within the community to really help your child, your family, get the best possible results and calm their brain, calm their nervous system down. So as always, guys, I'm Dr. Matt, and be well. We'll see